welcome to ATF Magazine Podcast. We have back with us a good friend, Mitch Brouillette. You met him in an earlier podcast interview. Mitch is an active duty law enforcement officer here in a local city in California. As well, he is involved with a private training group called Delta Tactical. And more than anything, Mitch is a nationally recognized expert on school safety, having served as a school resource officer through his department. And you can find a very, very inspiring and impressive video on YouTube that now has racked up. I think last time I looked, it was 7 to 10 million views. I mean, it's unbelievable. You've become a Kardashian celebrity just from your work. But Mitch, it's great to have you back. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back.
It's my pleasure. We are just in awe and so grateful of your service and everything that you do, not only in your day-to-day job, but in your mission to inspire others. To be safe, to protect their families, to protect their schools, to continue training. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. It's good timing. All of our kids are going back to school. Schools are back in session, everything from preschools and elementary all the way to universities. And unfortunately, since, we last spoke, things have not gotten any calmer, out there on the home front. We have had more shootings. We've had more tension. We've got more frustration. It feels like, especially in some urban areas all across the nation, I travel quite a bit, and, it just feels like the pot's getting ready to boil over in a lot of these, people are just frustrated. People are pissed off. And I think it's bringing a lot of those that are, kind of on the fringe, it's breaking them and causing them to do crazy things. So I wanted to bring you back just to, kind of talk about your thoughts about, school training, LEO training, because a lot of our audience is LEO. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. And then also, we can get into just some general training, some general drills that even parents can do with their kids, regardless of how old they are, just to increase their own situational awareness and readiness, no matter what situation they find themselves in, and whether that be at school or at a mall or, at McDonald's, like unfortunately recently we've seen situations erupt at all three of those. So, what are you seeing out there, and what do you kind of think, since the last time we talked, what are you seeing out there?
Well, since we talked last time, I'm still actively out there pushing training. And I recently did one at a school, and I had an older teacher come up to me afterwards and ask, hey, after 9/11, we saw this big increase of airport safety, and with the TSA example, right? And his question to me was, how come we don't have anything federally for school safety? And it hit me like, you know what, you're right. And it was the first person to kind of like open my eyes to, this is something that needs to go consistently across,
Yes.
the United States. And you asked me last time, we talked about why is this so prevalent in America compared to other countries? And why is it? And why don't we do more? Like let's have federal funding to provide safety in schools. Like it makes zero sense. But until that happens, we really schools have to take an emphasis on training. And to me, it's a sad thing to say, but it seems like everything comes down to money and a budget, and we can't do this because of the cost, or it's too much of an inconvenience to get everyone together, or we don't want to put fear in people, or those kinds of things. Well, you can put fear, the people that are doing these crimes and are putting fear in people. So to me, it comes down to as far as the school wise, they have to make it a priority, and it's no longer taboo. We can talk about it. It's happening. The kids are scared. Teachers are scared. And they want to know what they can do to survive this. So my big thing has always been training. And for schools, what has to happen is, there's education code and assembly legislation that says they have to have some sort of a safety plan. And that safety plan includes a team. So it starts with the superintendent of schools, the principal of the campus, getting in a room with the chief of police, the battalion captain in the fire side of the house. Like, everyone needs to get into a room and sit down and make this, like I said, it's legislation says they have to, but no one puts the time into doing it. And when you really sit down as a group and you start talking about it, it's communication that starts this whole thing out. And we have to make it a priority. And right now, some places do and other places don't. We're not consistent. So we need to start by getting consistent when it comes to our school safety.
I think it's, I think it's tough. And one of the things that really struck me last time that we spoke was, you mentioned a statistic that, we still have 3 to 4 annual fire drills on school sites, and we haven't had even a school fire, or maybe it was a school-related death, since the 70s. And yet, this is still something. Now, that said, I do have to say, the drills aren't taken seriously. I mean, they check the box, but the bell goes off and everybody kind of slumps out of their seat and slumps outside and stands there for 60 seconds or whatever it is. And, what's amazing to me, I recently thought the same thing as you, following your conversation that you just mentioned, that, it's interesting that state buildings, federal buildings, police departments, they're all fortified. They have security. They have security protocols. They limit and control entry. They know who's on site and who's not on site at any given moment. These are pretty basic things and basic protocols and basic systems, that we've had in place in federal and state buildings and other secure facilities for decades and decades and decades, right? Like, I mean, my home security system at my house is more robust and more capable than I would guess 95% of the school sites, that are in America. And I hear you're right. Everybody says, oh, it's the money. And yet, when COVID shut down, the country had no problem finding hundreds of billions of dollars, to fast track, shots, to fast track tests, to, and to send out, PPP loans to, untold number of businesses in several rounds of money. And we were able to find that, at the drop of a hat. So, so what, I mean, we could get on this rant, and you and I could talk about this for, the next 8 hours, I'm sure, and still get nowhere. But I think, at the end of the day, it does come down to parents and citizens demanding more, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you are a parent, and I'll give you an example, there's a girl I went to high school with who lives in Florida. She has her child goes to a Catholic school, and she has been in their ear at that school for months trying to bring training, to the point where now it's on the fact that, I might be going down there to do training, but it took her to continue to put pressure on the school. So parents should be involved. Like I said, even, parents should know the type of training their kids they're going to get. Now, I do agree there's some kids, especially those, kids with special needs and that kind of stuff, that maybe that they don't need to go through any type of drill, and they have the ability to have an opt-out and not participate. But the teacher in that classroom should at least have an idea of what needs to be done. So, I highly suggest at least a 2-step training when it comes to teachers and staff. There's work, a presentation on lessons learned from past events. The guys that are committing, these awful acts, they're studying people's, what's worked in the past. Right. Like I said, I think we talked about Texas Tower. What is that eerily similar to is Vegas, right? Elevated position, not sure where the shots are coming from. This whole new tactic of fire alarms being pulled and people walking out to the unknown, because now it's easy to get a large crowd into one spot. And even this last one in Uvalde, he did something that we haven't really seen before, and he barricaded himself inside of a classroom with the students and teacher. Like, that's a whole different tactic. He and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that report, but he targeted that particular classroom because that was the 4th grade that was where he got bullied in 4th grade, and he went back as that's the negative thing that happened in his life. And, you could look at, and if you read that report, he met every checkbox there was to an active shooter. And guess what? There was all kinds of signs that led up to it that he was going to do this awful event, and no one said anything. So, the training, you can't sugarcoat it. It has to be genuine. It has to be real. And you're not scaring people when you put them through this training. You're building confidence, and I tell the teachers, I apologize to them in the beginning. I say, hey, I got into law enforcement and the military knowing I was going to get into a critical incident. When you became a teacher, you shouldn't have to worry about this, but that's
right.
The world that we live in. And what I do tell them is, this is not about scaring you. This is about building confidence, and confidence how to effectively react to a critical incident that you could possibly be involved in. And it's truly remarkable when they come in and they're scared. You can see it in their eyes. And then all of a sudden, as you get them through the presentation and then on to scenarios, you can see the confidence being built. And then they come up to you and they tell you, hey, I have a plan. This is what I'm going to do, or I keep this in my classroom.
Right.
It's all those good. So for me, it's like, I'm nervous when I start doing it, getting ready to do the training, but then it brings me this sense of, I feel so much better when I leave. I just brought it to my community, and it just gives me a sense now, like, of at least they have an idea of what to do if something happened, to where my kids go to school and that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, we share in that. I think, I would love to live in this fantasy land that, some people live in. I truly do, because it's stressful to live in my world, where you're situationally aware and, you read these situations and you've seen situations, and, it's not a peaceful, happy place most of the time, right? Because you're always thinking, what if? But that said, and the same goes for my kids. I'd love to maintain that innocence, for as long as possible. But the reality is, I'm not willing to gamble with my family's life. Even if it's 0.1% chance, that's too great of a chance for me, and it costs me nothing to train and prepare and to educate, and hopefully do it in a way that isn't scary. But I have read the Uvalde report, and I've seen, a lot of the body cam footage, and I think a lot of that has leaked out publicly, and is generally accessible. And I encourage everybody, as horrible as it is, to watch that, especially with the audio on, and watch this happen, because this happened in a rural little, American community, right? Like, this was a tight community. This wasn't, South Chicago or Detroit. Like, this is Uvalde, I mean, and everybody thinks about it because it's not in their backyard, and my backyard's different, but it isn't different. But the point is, these things are happening everywhere. And when you watch that video, and you especially listen to that video, and you listen to these.
Sorry about that.
No worries. To these shots going off over and over and over again, it changes you, right? So I think, for our audience that is LEO, your message is the same message you always give, right? Continue to train. You've got to be prepared and take this seriously, right?
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at any of the events that law enforcement's had to deal with on a level this big, it comes down to well, first of all, the decisions are being magnified. That's what's being magnified by others, is they're looking at what decision was made, or actually even indecisions that weren't made. And so where a lot of these failures are happening is lack of leadership and pre-event planning are the two number one reasons why. And like any type of critical incident, it's a low risk or low frequency, high risk event, right? You can send people out, we can set perimeters all day long, right? Or you can handle this type of call. But because these critical incidents on the level that big, we don't get a lot of training in them. We don't even get a lot of experience in them, right? God forbid you have to deal with one in your career. Nobody wants to go through it. So how do we how are we going to change and adapt and evolve to start dealing with these things on a higher level? And it goes to pre-event planning. So there's some agencies that out there that are very, very proactive. There's some that this is probably not going to happen in my town, so they're not real. It's not on the top of their agenda. And it goes down to, again, the law enforcement budget, right? And those kinds of things. And really, if you fail on a critical incident, just like Uvalde, you're going to lose immediately trust amongst your organization. You're going to lose trust in the public, right? Like, you're going to all those years of doing good things. You can have the best law enforcement agency in America, and the community loves you. But if you fail on that day, the expectations they're going to lose them, and they're going to lose your trust. And you got to tell law enforcement that these events are career ending, or they could even be life ending. Like, they just fired the chief in Uvalde, right? How is he going to go home and face his family? Like, or you put it on your soul that, man, I failed to react.
I should have.
Yeah. And you're going to live with that for your life. And not only the things you're going to see when you go in there, but the things you're going to deal with years and years and years to come. And, I think an easy way to do it is, tabletop exercise, in your organization. But then you have to expand it, include the schools, let them know what the response is going to be, and get information from a school. Not that all these events are just happening at schools, but you have to get everyone involved and everyone in the same room, because it goes down to it as even like things like, okay, the incident's happened, you went in, you made the decision. Well, now you got family coming to the site where all these things happen. So what does family reunification look like?
Right.
Now you got all these cops that just went through all this, or these firefighters that went through all this. Okay, now that's over. Now they've been on there 18, 20 hours. Are we just going to send them home, or do we triage them, to let them know, hey, this is what you're going to feel the next couple of days. And, and by the 5th day, we'll have a critical incident debrief, and we'll have everyone there. But if you need something, I want you to reach out, if you're going through something. So
right.
that kind of sets the table for all of law enforcement and what their expectations are, not just what's going to happen on that day or that site and making the right decision and diagnosing what the crisis is, but run them through the full training of, once it's completed, then it's going to be turned over to INV and, DOJ and FBI and everyone else that's going to come out. We're not going to send you immediately home. You're going to have to get triaged before we send you home. Like, all those type of things. And that goes back to pre-event planning. And if we start really making a focus on that, and it could start, you don't have to start at like a whole department level. You could start it, if you're in a position you could be an officer, and you could bring it to your briefing table, and you could say, to your sergeant or to your immediate supervisor, hey, I want to talk about what we would do if we had this incident. And then all it is you guys are talking. And then I guarantee you, and I was told this a long time ago, Patrick, and it stays with me, and I utilize it with my SWAT team. You can give, like, let's use a SWAT team. Most of them are 15 to 20 members on a team, right? I can give them a critical incident or whatever we're going to end up be dealing with it. That's 15 or 20 different computers computing that tactical problem. And if you don't take value in every single member's opinion and what they're thinking, then you're losing out. From the newest man on the team to the most seasoned guy on the team, everyone has a say. They're going to think about it differently. And when you get in a room and you start talking about it, you realize, you know what, that's a good point. Like I said, this teacher came up to me with this, why don't we have this federally funded school safety? And I'm like, I never thought about it. And you're freaking right that we should have something to that level. So my biggest thing when it comes to talking to law enforcement is that pre-event planning and finding a way, because if you pre-event plan, here's what happens. This is why people fail to take leadership, is because you know why? They're overwhelmed by events. And so what happens is they get into a shell because they're not sure of what to do. And part of that training, hey, this is what you may feel this, you may feel overwhelmed by events, but here's a quick little thing. There's 9 things you can do to overcome that. And they're broken down into 3s. And there's 3 things I need to know right now, 3 things I need to do right now, and 3 things I can delegate those things to be done. And then you can start bringing this crisis from such a magnitude into a smaller ability to work it. So, right. But law enforcement we have to, Columbine was a watershed moment. Uvalde's a watershed moment. All these events, and they're not black swan events. They keep happening, but why are we
Columbine happened, Columbine was Littleton, right?
Yeah. 1999.
Yeah. I mean, 1999, right? I mean, and we're still dealing with this and systematically what's changed. Right. Not really all that much, in the grand scheme of things. Right. But I do love what you just said, which I think I think it's a problem. I think it's a challenge within law enforcement. Is we do promote that concept of a force multiplier to the citizens of the community that you serve, of see something, say something, right? That we're not a lone force out there. We can't do it without you. So if you see something, no matter how crazy, no matter how remote of a possibility you think the possibility is, still just give us a call. We'll come and check it out, and hopefully it'll turn out to be nothing. But within the department, right, a lot of, let's say, it's a rookie even, and he comes in with all these fresh ideas and new and creative and hasn't, been indoctrinated into the mold. He could have a bunch of ideas, but, does your department have the environment where new ideas are welcomed? Where questions are viewed as a positive thing because somebody's interested or excited or wants to learn? Or is it, hey, I'll let you know when to worry about that. Hey, hey, command staff's got it. Don't freaking worry about it. When you'll know how to do it when I tell you how to do it.
That's culture. Yeah, that's culture. That's the culture of your agency. It's the culture of what law enforcement has been.
Right.
And we have to change that. It's on us to change that kind of culture. Is, hey, they're going to come in with some ideas, and we have to be open to it. And you got to have a place to be able to bring it up. And just like you said with schools, it's the same thing. If you're a teacher or you're, I don't know, even a assistant teacher, or you're, you work recess only, you're out of, a yard duty or something like that. If you're seeing something, we should provide the arena to allow you to have a safe place to report something and say, hey, look, I'm seeing this. Can we discuss this? And all that should be taken in with value. And, speaking on that, when you do bring trainings to schools, and you could do a presentation in a general location, but when you do scenario training, it needs to be site specific, because each school is going to have a different tactical dilemma and those type of things. And it gives them a concept of asking directly about, well, what if we're right here in this location by the gym? What would you do? Or that kind of stuff. But that also, it's going to bring extra work to administration, because you're going to find faults in your fencing, your security. You may have a part of the campus that can't hear the PA system if you need to give out an alert. Like, all those things are going to cause additional work. But guess what? It could also save a life down the road. And what is it really a little bit of extra work going to do? The one thing you did touch on, and you said it perfectly, and I brought this to the community I work in. Some of the cops hate me for it, but there's a thing out there. It's a nonprofit right after Sandy Hook, and it's called Say Something, and it's an app that it doesn't cost the schools any money. It's an app that's brought into the schools to allow anonymous reporting, everything from bullying to threats to vandalism or to theft. But what it allows is for a student to go onto the app. It's site specific to the school, and they can start interacting and texting with a dispatch center out of Florida, and it's triage on what they have. Depending on what they have, it might go the school route only, or it could go law enforcement and school, but it allows for a safe, anonymous way reporting system to allow students who hear something that they see something or they know something is going on. It gives them an opportunity to be able to report it. And like you just said earlier, let us determine it's going to be nothing. Right. And right. I mean, it could be from, hey, my friend is suicidal, or my friend is getting hurt at home. And so, yeah, and law enforcement has to buy into it, and your department has to buy into it. But it's another way to allow for something to be reported, because in the long run, 99% of these events, there was some pre-event leading up to it that we could have maybe stopped it. Once it starts,
yeah,
we're only going to mitigate casualties, and we're going to have to do. But if we can get it before it even starts, that has to be a way to do it. Like Uvalde, he put out there.
There were so many signs, so many signs. Signals.
Yeah, and he did. No one reported it. All the gaming, the gaming apps and stuff he was on, talking about it and talking to people, and no one took it real. You know what? Call it in. Let us determine it's not real, and let us inconvenience somebody. But in the long run, you could be that one person that stops this whole thing before it starts.
Yeah, I agree. You brought up something earlier that I'm always aware of, which is, as much as we're talking about schools, this isn't just a school situation, right? There's this mass carnage, kind of taking place everywhere. We recently saw, one being attempted and thankfully shut down by a good guy who's a CCW holder in a food court of a mall, and stuff like this is happening more and more often. And, as much as, CPS and a ton of judgmental parents will judge me for being a horrible parent, which maybe they're right. I've got a 5-year-old and an 11-year-old. And, since my 11-year-old was probably 4 or 5, we play this little game. And anytime we go anywhere, we sit down in a restaurant, we sit down in a movie theater, we sit down like anywhere. We just went to Disneyland. I'll say, hey, how many people, do you think are in the restaurant right now? Where are the exits to the restaurant? Where's the bathroom to the restaurant? If a bad guy came in that door right now, where would you go? What would you do? And, maybe they're just so used to it that they don't have a traumatic effect, so maybe I've just traumatized them so much that they're numb to it. But, it is a game to where now when they sit down, they'll be, every once in a while, if I forget or something, they'll just be sitting there staring at me like, so when are we going to do it? Like, come on. But what it shows me is that they are developing situational awareness, and they are thinking about just even basic things like if something's bad. Now I already know where the exit is. I already know where the bathroom is. I already know, hey, if I can't get to there's only one way in and out. Oh, my 11-year-old the other day said, this is a solid wood tabletop. I just flip the table over and hide behind it, underneath the booth seat. It was like, damn, okay, that's pretty solid. Okay, I'll take that. So what, other than, what I'm sure both of our advice is, this comes down to parents, and it comes down to citizens being involved. And, at some point or another, you've got to get pissed off and decide enough is a frick enough. And just like you said, my kids go to a private Catholic school. And, I've kind of quietly, ever since the kids started in preschool, and like I said, my daughter's 11 now, I've kind of teased the idea like, man, your security sucks. But, nothing was really happening in those days. I mean, it had happened. I should have pushed harder. But for the past few years, like, I am a royal pain in the ass with them. Like, every freaking time I see anybody picking up the kids, dropping off the kids at an event. So how's that security plan coming? When are you going to fortify that fence? How come we have 5 entrances and exits into the school grounds that are uncontrolled? How come I saw that door open? How come I saw this? Hey, that camera's broken. Like, just constant pain in the ass. Well, this year we started school, and I'm impressed. Like, it is a pain in the butt for parents now, and they're complaining because now there's just one entry, one exit. It's always staffed by 2 people. The gate shut and locks 15 minutes after school starts. It doesn't open until like exactly when school's over. Like, they're starting at least it's progress. They're thinking about it. But it was after yelling and screaming, and I'm sure other parents yelling and screaming and, holding the fire to their toes. So I think other than that, hopefully parents and citizens are saying, look, enough's enough. Like, we need to do something about this. We need to increase funding to our police departments for both staffing and training. These guys are important, and they're standing in harm's way for us. And, they're not getting the training. They don't have the numbers that they need to combat today's situations. But beyond that, schools need additional money and resources focused specifically on security. So these are all things citizens should be yelling and screaming and writing letters and demanding. But until that happens, do you have any suggestions better than my own, practices of what parents can do with their kids, whether their kid is 5 or their kid's going to college and they're 20? What advice would you give? I'm sure you're a far better parent than I am.
No, I'm almost on the same, like what you were saying is pretty much a lot of the things that I do. I do commend you though for the whole squeaky wheel gets the grease, and, you didn't stop, and, you kept mentioning to your school, these are the things that I'm seeing. Like we know from the Uvalde incident, he made entrance into the school from an unlocked door, what if that door was locked? What that would look like. So I think you have to start by talking to your kids. And like I said, without instilling fear in them. My kids are the same way. I have 4. I have one that's graduated college, one that's in college, one in high school, and one in middle school. So I'm spread out all the way through. But since they've been young, I've talked to them about things. Like I think I told you in the last episode we did, I might bringing it to my like family, my in-laws. And, we were in Hawaii waiting to go whale watching, and there's 300 people standing on this dock area. And I just asked my father-in-law, I just said, hey, what would you do if someone started shooting? We're in an open outside. What would you do? And he looked around. He's like, well, I'd get behind. He wasn't sure, but he's like, I'd get behind that pillar. Like that's a start. That's cover. Understanding, as silly as it sounds, what's concealment, what's cover. Like, my kids know cement is better than a wooden picnic table. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things. So I think it starts with just having the conversation. And what I'm seeing, though, is the kids nowadays, they take it more serious because the reality of it could happen, or the potential that it could happen at their school or their location. Or I don't know if you saw, but there's just one this week in Bend, Oregon, inside of a grocery store, Yeah. And it's like, these things can happen anywhere. And if it all goes back to the whole thing is, you're not going to rise to the occasion. You're going to divert back to your training when it comes to these incidents. So, if you're walking around and you're looking, and I tell my kids, hey, look, if something happens and we're here, this is what I'm going to do. And this is what I expect you guys to do. You know what I mean? And like I said, my son does theater. And so we go to these big theaters, which are very, very tactically a disadvantage, right? For the people that are sitting there with the stadium seating and all that kind of stuff that's happening. But what can I do to survive it? And I'll ask him, hey, if I asked you to leave right now, where would you go? Okay, what other place could you go? So I think having a genuine, open conversation with them, it's not a bad parent. I think, to me, honestly, that's being a good parent, because you're teaching them. Or if I see something, like we're out and I notice something like a guy fidgeting, or maybe I can tell, like, hey, that dude might have a gun in his waistband or something to that extent. I tell the people I'm with, I'm like, hey, dude, just watch this person. I do a horrible job about sizing people up. I try to wear sunglasses as much as I can, but I'm always looking about that, because I tell my family, I don't want to be an easy victim. I don't want my family to be a victim. I don't want, any of those type of things. I mean, it could happen. I mean, but at least if you had some sort of idea. So I would say, don't stay away from it. Talk to them younger rather than they get older. Start when they're younger, because if you keep talking to them about it, it just becomes second nature for them to take a look at things and see things a different way. Like I said, I tell this in my presentation that I give to staff. Like, my wife, she lives in condition white, and she believes everything in this world is good. And and when I'm with her, that's cool. Like, stay living in that condition, because I don't want her to be like I am. But when I'm not with her, I need her to get to yellow and white makes tan, get to tan, because I just want you to be situationally aware. So my suggestion to parents is talk to them about it. If you're seeing things at your school, don't be afraid to mention it. Schools are, and do it in an email, because now you have it documented. And, you said, hey, I brought this to your guys' attention, 3 months ago. Have we had a chance to take a look at it? So be that squeaky wheel when it comes to what you want to see change in your schools. And some schools, they're very proactive about it. And I'll give you an easy example. I think I told you I was doing this training for my department. And one of the things, if you read the Uvalde report, somehow they waited inside this hallway for 40 minutes to get a master key, right? A key costs, I don't know, $10. These are priority keys. So they're a little bit special, whatever the cost is. So I have 2 superintendents that live in the community that I work in, or not live, but that are we have 2 school districts in the community I work in. I hit up one of them. I said, hey, I need 40 keys, master keys. I said, I want to put them in every patrol car, every detective car, every administrator car. And we have community service officers and those cars too. So I need about 40. He said, okay, no problem. I asked the other superintendent, I had to talk to his secretary. I asked for the same thing. He delivered 10. He's like, we'll start by just putting them in the admin or the sergeant cars and the admin cars. And I thought to myself, I'm like, why? Like, why is that such a big deal? And why is this thing so protective? So I went to the chief and I said, hey, look, I got 40 keys from one superintendent. The other one only gave me 10. Can you make a phone call? And he did. So now we have all 40 keys. But it's as simple as we have 17, 18 schools in our community. And to get into all the schools is 4 different keys. It's a key ring with 4 keys on it. I just color coded them, and that allows you into the schools. And now it's in every patrol car, every CSO car, every detective car. Now it allows for, the Uvalde thing. The breach point was the big deal, right? Because of metal frame door with a metal door, not a lot of give. It's hard to breach. A normal average or a patrol officer doesn't have a lot of training in breaching, right? That shouldn't be a delay. Now you don't have a delay because maybe you have a school that has card access. Give us card access on the back of our ID cards, So those type of things. I know that kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent.
But I mean, the biggest point to me is, here you have a local police department actively involved and interested and willing and saying to the superintendent, I just need 40 keys. And he gives you 10. Yeah. I don't mean to call him out. I'm sure he's a fine guy or gal or whatever, but like 10 instead of 40.
I told him I would.
And here's the reason for it. Like, the reason, why we're asking, like, what? That if that cost is too great, then I shouldn't bring up the 80 other things that are infrastructure, fall shorts in your entire system that really you should be addressing. If you can't afford the extra 30 keys, like, seriously? After everything that's happened.
It's just one more thing that we don't have to worry about. It's one more thing we can check off the boxes. One of our schools has gates that are powered with garage door openers. So we spent, as a department, I spent, I don't know, $150 or maybe $200 on buying garage door openers for every patrol car. Now they have access to all the gates to get to the back road. So it's little things like that. If you can, it all goes back to pre-event planning, what you're diagnosing as what needs to be handled so you can effectively react to that event. I should not be delayed because I don't have access into the crisis site. I should not be delayed waiting on a key or waiting on this to make access to it. Like, these are little things that we can get ahead of, and you're being proactive rather than reactive. And so, and then you can say, so that question down the road goes, well, you guys didn't have a key. How come? The Uvalde report says, you waited 40 minutes for a key. Why did you wait 40 minutes for that key? That's one more thing you could check off the boxes. I had access to it immediately, If you have SROs on campus, those vehicles should have breaching tools, 40 millimeter shields stocked. And if you don't want to put your whole department with those things in a vehicle, have those SRO cars that are at the campus stocked with them. It's
already on site. Yeah.
It's already there. So little things like that. And that goes back to those tabletop exercises, those decision-making exercises of getting not just law enforcement, but you get the school safety team, whoever that looks like, whatever that is, all together in the same room. And you write down the vulnerabilities and you write down the things that are considered concerns. But then you come back a month later and say, okay, we addressed these 10 things as vulnerabilities. These are the 10, this is how we corrected it. Like you said, you went, hey, why is this door open? Or why isn't that camera fixed? Those kind of things, and come back with a checklist, a month later, 30 days later, hey, these things are all now fixed.
And the other thing I've found too is, if the conversation usually comes back to money. Oh, we just don't have the money. You know what? There's so many state and federal grants out there. And even if there isn't, there's PTOs and there's individual fundraising. Like, if this matters to you, and I don't know how it can not frickin' matter to you. Like, I encourage everybody to go watch the video. Turn that sound up as loud as it'll frickin' go, and close your eyes and imagine that's your kid's school, and then come back and tell me it doesn't matter. Like, it's unbelievable to me that we're at this point where you can shut down the whole conversation by just saying, oh yeah, we don't really have the budget for it. Well, then tell me exactly how much it's going to cost, and I'll figure out a way to fundraise. Like, if I have to set up a freaking lemonade stand on my corner every freaking day for the next 5 years, I'll figure out a way to come up with the money. But, like, these are my kids.
Yeah. And that's why we have to do more too, law enforcement wise. I think we really do. And if you understand that we're, it's a law enforcement, when they deal with these, they have constraints and restraints, right? What we do has to be legally within policy and morally correct. The person doing this crime, guess what? He has no restraints and no constraints. His behavior is unrestricted. So we have to combat that, but we also have to think at the same time, if I have a clear identified end state when it comes to an active shooter event, and that clear identified end state is to stop the killing, stop the dying, then I have to act and I have to do what I can. And if that's to shoot 40 millimeters in the front window while the team makes entry from the back, well, guess that's what I'm going to do. If I have to throw rounds up into the eaves to get things going, that's what I need to do. These are all the things that I have to think outside the box. Yeah. You may have a rescue an armored vehicle that you run through the front part of the entry just to create that OODA loop and get into that person's brain, but you're doing things to stop it. So we have to do more. Like, I don't know, I can go on for days about, what the training should look like and those kinds of things. We got to talk about, everything from why do we always enter the crisis site through the primary breach point? It's right. A silly thing to talk about, but if you don't talk about it, law enforcement wise, why do we always go through the same door that they go into, right? Borderline. What was that? That was an ambush, he ambushed those cops coming in through the front.
Yeah. But you know what, Mitch, like, I don't think there's many people that are a bigger supporter of law enforcement than I am. And, I empathize with the situation that you all are in today, right? The job has never been tougher than it is today. And you have fewer resources to combat that current problem that you're facing every single day today. And I'm not just talking about active shooter situations. Like, the full breadth of your job is tougher and more complicated than it's ever been. And it's only compounded by the fact that, on one hand, you have people yelling and screaming at you about using too much force, not de-escalating, not being, passive community servants, that every cop is bad, everything else. But then in the exact same breath, criticizing, that you didn't go in and impulse kill, somebody that had walked into a classroom with a firearm, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have, that not you, but, that the Uvalde situation shouldn't have been brought to a conclusion in a more expeditious manner than it was. But for every person that yells at a cop saying, oh, there you are beating up on a minority again, when that minority was armed, was a felon, was wanted, wasn't complying, and geez, you were so rough with him. Like, can't you, now let's file a civil suit. Let's have the ACLU involved. Let's do all these different things. It causes you to hesitate. It causes you to second guess your instinct. It causes all these things because there's so many ramifications that fall off on departments now for you guys, largely just doing your job in most cases. I'm not saying that there hasn't been a few egregious things, but by far and large, every single day, every one of you get it 99% right. And you're just trying to do, the best that you can. So again, I think it comes back to the community and individuals being clear about what our need is for policing, and that it is you guys standing in between us and all this escalation of bad guys. And, whether it's a school shooting or it's just a strong arm robbery or it's a carjacking or whatever it happens to be, bad guys are bad guys.
Right. We talked about it in the first episode where, we brought up gun laws, and the people that are committing these crimes, they're not following the laws. They're not following a sign. They're not following any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it has been, and we have to evolve. We have to do things in law enforcement. It's an ever changing, career, and we have to culturally, there's some things that we have to change, for all the way around. Like you said earlier, like the brand new officer that's on the street, like he's going to have ideas. And in the past, guess what? Wait your turn, rookie. You'll be able to talk at some point. But now we have to change culturally, that we have to do that kind of stuff. And every member of your department, it has some sort of value to it. Like I said, this whole thing to me is we have to do better from a law enforcement standpoint. We have to do better for our community. When it comes to the school stuff, the administrators and the people that are involved on the school safety need to do a better job. And at some point, I think federally, we need to do a better job in this community and make it more of a priority. What happens is it seems like it happens, then we move on and we wait for the next one to happen, and then we address that and some of the things that come out from it. So Uvalde is going to be ever changed. Littleton, Colorado is going to be forever changed. Yeah. Parkland, Florida is going to be forever changed. All those places are going to be forever changed. And we need to, we owe it to our communities. But the one thing
that I appreciate that. And I think you take too much burden on yourself, because I'll say the one thing that everybody is, no matter what their role is you're a citizen of this country and you should demand better. And, at the end of the day, these people are people that we elected into office to act in our best interest. And, if you do not see the change that you deem suitable, to provide the safety and security and freedom, that we're all here for, then you should demand better, because, you guys shouldn't be fighting this alone. We should be the full force multiplier that, we all used to be and should be every single day to have your backs.
I appreciate that, Patrick. Thank you.
All right, buddy. Well, listen, again, a ton of wisdom and experience in this. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all this with us. Please, on behalf of ATF Magazine and, our millions of readers and everybody else that, watches this, please know that we are eternally grateful for everything you and your brothers and sisters do out there, keeping us safe and standing in the way of, between us and the bad guys. So keep up the good work. And as always, let us know how we can help watch you back.
All right, Patrick, thanks so much for having me, man. It's I love what you're doing with this platform. So anytime I could be part of it, just give me a ring. I'd love to be down. So
I appreciate that, brother. Take care and stay safe.
All right, thank you.